miles beneath the restless Atlantic, where sunlight never penetrates and silence reigns absolute, lies a place frozen in time, a place of urgency, fear, and fragile hope, where the wounded once arrived seeking care, and where the last acts of humanity unfolded amid the chaos of the Titanic's final hours. Now all is still. Rusted beds, tarnished instruments, and the faint outlines of glass vials remain suspended in the dark waters. This is the hospital of the Titanic, a sanctuary swallowed by the sea. April 14th, 1912. The Titanic was not just a marvel of engineering. It was a floating city. Beneath its polished decks and gilded salons lay a medical bay designed to treat any ailment at sea. Doctors and nurses moved among sterile beds, surgical instruments and bottles of tinctures, ready to care for first class and steerage alike. Here, the sick and injured could find solace. There were beds with crisp white sheets, wheelchairs standing, ready, and small tables laid with glass vials of medicine, syringes, and jars of antiseptic. Every detail spoke of careful planning and meticulous care, a hospital fit for a ship billed as unsinkable. But that night, chaos erupted. The iceberg tore through the hull, sending water rushing into the lower decks. Patients were hurriedly moved, instruments abandoned, and the hospital became a tomb as the ship's fate was sealed. More than a century later, explorers descending to the wreck discovered the forgotten hospital. Their lights pierced the deep, revealing beds still aligned in neat rows, white sheets decayed but visible. Wheelchairs lay overturned, some trapped beneath collapsed beams. Metal cabinets, once gleaming, now corroded, spilled their contents. Glass syringes, pill boxes, and medical charts preserved in the cold depths. One diver's camera caught the faint reflection of a tarnished scalpel. It lay on a rusted tray, the instrument itself frozen in time, untouched for decades. Nearby, medicine bottles, some still sealed, floated suspended in sediment clouds, shimmering like lost stars. Every item spoke of interrupted lives. The tools of care had become artifacts of tragedy, echoing the human urgency that once filled this space. Historians describe the Titanic's hospital as a testament to early 20th century medicine. It was small, efficient, and fully equipped. A pharmacy stocked with opium, quinine, and morphine. A surgical bay with steel instruments polished to perfection, and anesthesia apparatus capable of saving lives during long Atlantic crossings on E. That fateful night, doctors and nurses were overwhelmed. Some tended to injured passengers even as the decks flooded beneath them. Others tried desperately to move patients to safety, carrying stretchers down corridors that were quickly filling with icy water. The hospital was one of the last places to witness human courage, fear, and devotion. And now, beneath the waves, it stands as a silent witness to that courage. As deep-sea robots swept the hospital with cameras, astonishing details emerged. A medical chart, fragile and stained, was discovered under a collapsed table. Though indecipherable in most areas, its existence confirmed that doctors had documented care, perhaps even the final hours of a patient who never survived. Nearby, a glass syringe, sealed and intact, reflected the torchlight as if waiting for hands that would never return. Metal trays, corroded and bent, held faint remnants of what might have been bandages or antiseptic powders, now dissolved into the sediment. Even wheelchairs, bent and rusted, told stories. One had a faint imprint of a patient who had sat there in fear. Another had a torn leather strap, suggesting hurried attempts to restrain or transport someone. Each object was a frozen fragment of a night where humanity met catastrophe. The Titanic's hospital is more than a room. It is a monument to quiet heroism. Its walls, now covered with algae and coral, preserve the echoes of hands that treated strangers as if they were family. The instruments are no longer sterile, the beds no longer warm, yet their arrangement tells a story of order amidst chaos, of care amidst destruction. The cold of the Atlantic has preserved what the fire of panic and the flood could not entirely erase. The ocean hums through collapsed beams, the water diffusing the faint shapes of instruments and beds, creating a spectral tableau of life interrupted. Imagine the nurses, a young woman balancing a lantern, her hair plastered to her brow, moving carefully between the frozen beds. Imagine the doctors, hands trembling, attempting to save lives as icy water rose around them. Every syringe, every scalpel, every vial tells a story of these last moments. Human devotion caught in amber, preserved not in museum glass, but in the cold cathedral of the deep. Even the smallest items speak volumes. A pillbox clasped shut, a thermometer cracked, a bottle tipped sideways on the floor. All symbols of interrupted care and the fleeting nature of life. What fascinates modern explorers most is not just the preservation, but the silence. The hospital exists in a state of eternal waiting, as if the staff might return to continue their work at any moment. The deep seems almost sacred, protecting these relics from looters and time, allowing them to remain suspended between tragedy and memory. The instruments are ghostly and beautiful. Silver trays glint faintly, glass vials sparkle as the light passes through, and rusted wheelchairs cast long shadows on the sedimented floor. There is a strange poetry here. The poetry of care and loss, of life interrupted and preserved. Today, the Titanic's hospital is more than history. It is a meditation on mortality, on courage, and on the fragility of life. It reminds us that behind every luxury aboard the ship were ordinary acts of care, and that the hands of those who served, doctors, nurses, stewards, left traces that endure even in the crushing depths of the ocean. In this underwater tomb, every object is a voice. A scalpel whispers of precision, a syringe hums of hope. A wheelchair groans with the weight of humanity. The Titanic's hospital is silent now, but its story resonates across the century, a testament to life, to duty, and to the enduring presence of memory in the face of oblivion. And so, beneath the waves in the cold and dark, the hospital waits. It waits for recognition. It waits for understanding. It waits quietly, eternally beneath the Atlantic, where the echoes of forgotten lives still linger, whispering their stories to those brave enough to listen.